As I just said, don't believe you can start small and get it to become something big. You could do that, but then you'll end up having to make a stop point in that process. So you'll have to, you can start a little bit small and then you take it way back and start thinking about the operations plan and the documentation and the setup and everything, and then you move on from there. Always build for scalability. So I said resilience just before, basically, and now I say scalability. Always build for scalability, not for scale. Know what the data is. Basically, understand the data. Don't believe in marketing.
Hello, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Engatica interview series. I'm your host, Kimberly, and we're really excited to have you join us today. Today, we have Lasse Rindom, Head of Digital Strategy and Implementation at zzzEnz Organic on the show. Welcome to the show, Lasse. We're so glad to have you join us today.
Thank you, Kimberly. It's really nice to be here.
Before we dive into our crazy interview with Lasse, don't forget to tap the Engati bell icon so that you get exclusive content from thought leaders from around the globe. Let me tell you a little bit about Engatica. Engatica series is a powerhouse of insights from industry experts and influencers from around the world. It is a platform that provides the latest news on AI, automation, and technologies that will help your business grow. Come be a part of our community where we learn, share, and grow together. So, Lasse, diving into our first question, can you help us understand digital strategy in the context of digital transformation? Now that a digital transformation was actually forced by the pandemic and businesses really had to turn around their strategies, can you help us understand digital strategy in this context?
Well, I think that some of the key things that were, moving already prior to the COVID and the pandemic going on was, people were still moving at that time to obviously more web shop and more online activity, and I think that's just accelerated. So you had a lot of structures in place. I think, I used to say that if anyone placed the COVID virus, it must have been Microsoft or Bill Gates. That's the only reason I could, and I'm not buying into the what do you call it, conspiracy theory. But listen out here. If Microsoft had not just released Teams, where would Microsoft be, with COVID, if they'd been on Skype for Business? Just imagine that. It's kind of a funny coincidence, I think, as a joke, that they just, released Teams, got Teams going, then COVID hit. Oh, by the way, we have this Teams platform that sort of integrates everything for you in collaboration, ready for, a nice build on SharePoint, which everyone really needed at that point. So I think, some of these companies, especially like Microsoft, was really lucky with the timing before COVID. But generally speaking, I think that, digital transformation has not really changed that much. The problem with digital transformation is it is very closely tied, I think, sometimes to the fear of disruption, right? Which is a fear you cannot really predict. It's difficult to predict what will hit you, because obviously if Kodak had really known that the digital camera would be a big smash hit, they would have accelerated the things they already owned in that market. They owned a lot of patents on digital cameras, but they didn't really see that because they owned the market until they were disrupted, right? And the same with digital transformation, saying when are we enough digital transformed? We don't really know until we're disrupted. It's the same, seeing these things right now with Facebook. A lot of companies still moving their digital and marketing strategy on Facebook and Meta, right? But things are moving to TikTok. You get 10 times as much audience and engagement right now on TikTok than you do on Facebook and Instagram. And that's just, then Facebook and Instagram are losing out. And can they do anything about it? Who knows, right? So that's a difficult thing. I see a lot of in the more, not in the more, world of automation that I came from before I joined zzzEnz Organic, at least, that a lot of people are looking at more resilience from the automations after COVID. So you saw a lot of companies where they had to send people home and they couldn't run the processes from home, and especially in countries where they're not as digitalized as we are in the Nordics. You simply saw entire processes going bankrupt over the COVID pandemic. In Germany, you couldn't, I heard, at least, I don't have as a first hand, but you couldn't even get your payslip because it was left in the office and they couldn't send it digitally because that was not allowed. There's not a policy for that. So it was just, you couldn't get your payslip during the COVID lockdown. That's a broken process, and a quite significant compliance process broken there. In Denmark, we had a lot of digitized. The whole public sector is digitized. We have digital public emails from everyone. We have digital tax system. Everything's digital. We have digital identities, each and every one of us. So I think we were much less hit by that than the rest of the world was actually hit by it, because we could still, function fully. We were like, oh, we have to stay at home, blah blah, yada yada, but everything worked. Companies worked, everything was digital, and I think that that's something that, as a Dane, I sometimes forget that when I talk to other people, when I talk about, how document scanning software, OCR software is not really needed. I come from a place where everything is already digital, so I sort of forget that there's a whole world out there that's still moving paper, a lot of paper. But that's how it is. You're a product of your environment, right? So I think that your question, digital strategy in the context of digital transformation, I don't think anything has really changed a lot there. I think some of the changes to your digital strategy has to do with capabilities in new software suites, and also especially the speed at which they move and change into something else, right? So you have tons of software that comes out all the time, and if you sort of lay down your you put all your oranges in one hat and you say, this is what I'm going to do, you're sort of missing out on a lot of opportunities. So I think we've learned over the last couple of years that we should invest in full suites of software. We should educate our people in working in full suites of software and knowing what they can do, and then having a scalable, what do you call it, scalable consultancy setup outside of it that can help you with all those things, where you don't know the details of running it, but you need to know what you can do with your AI engine, with your flow engine, with your low code app, with your RPA tool, where to use it, where to best apply it. That's something that it's been moving so fast. You just need to have options. This is also why, a couple of years ago, one of my key focuses was to say to people that instead of the ordinary IT strategy that we used to have, saying we need scale in everything was about scale, because that would bring down cost. It will also make it possible for you to get an IT support and IT security under control, everything. Then we are now looking at making something that's scalable. So we're aiming not for scale necessarily, but we're aiming for scalability, saying that if we want to do things, we can do it quickly, we can do it securely, and we can do it with an ops plan, right? So that's something that's definitely changed in the market over the last 5 years, moving to scalability instead of scale. And I don't think anyone is talking about, at least in the quarters that I'm listening to, and I have, my whole LinkedIn is filled with, digital and IT posts all the time. I don't have a lot of crap in my LinkedIn feed. I'm really happy for that, but they're not filled with scale anymore. If you go back 3 years, they're filled with scale. Everyone was talking about getting to scale. What do we do about scale, especially in these emerging technologies like automation technologies?
Correct. You very prominently mentioned softwares and IT support and IT security in terms of having a digital strategy put in place. Can you really tell us the difference between business digital strategy versus an IT strategy?
Well, I think that these two things they're a lot down to semantics. I think in a lot of ways, that's how you talk about things in IT. A normal person will talk about data flow, so they would talk about statistics, but in business you talk about AI and you talk about automation. You talk about it in different words, right? So to some extent, automation is a word that doesn't really make sense to an IT professional. I really don't think so. I think that's one of the big caveats between people right now, that in IT we talk about data all the time, whereas in business and everywhere else, and also in the marketing, they talk about automation. But just to sit down and think about for a moment what IT would be, if it had never tried to automate anything.
Right.
I think that's a brilliant question, actually. So if IT is not automation, what is IT? So saying to IT that, okay, IT, I made a post about that some weeks ago, also saying that, with a lot of tautological news headlines saying that, I can't remember, but tautology is like, the ball is round, of course the ball is round. The ball is round by definition, right? So saying that IT should add automation to its capabilities, I wrote, which is a tautological statement saying that IT is automation. Why should IT, which is automation, add automation as a capability? There's no magic in being able. I've always said there's no magic in being able to automate IT with IT. You've always been able to do that, right? So that was just on the automation thing, that there's some semantics going on. You said also you started off by saying security and resilience and ops plans and everything. And you're bringing me into a lot of different things here, right? Because I think that one of the one of the two megatrends we're seeing in IT strategy, which is becoming more and more just business strategy as well. You know, everyone digital business strategy. We're talking the same things, but in different words sometimes. But the megatrends right now, to my experience, is we want things to be smarter and automated, and we want data to flow freely and be able to be analyzed quickly and know everything about everything in our company and the company surroundings. So it's like very much on just let data move freely. I say, you know, let your children run wild and free, let your data grow wild and free, right? And then you have on the other hand the IT security saying don't let your data run anywhere at all, right? So you have two really big megatrends that are sort of like clashing. And no one is like saying that, oh, we can just be lenient with IT security, especially not in the current world where you have a global crisis and you have tons of, you know, hacking, phishing attempts all the time in everywhere, and multiple, especially Western companies. I don't know how it is in the rest of the world, but Western companies are being, they're under heavy bombardment from hackers from around the world. I also know this impacts, you know, some of the biggest firms in IT, biggest IT consultancies have had huge breakdowns. I think Cognizant had one 2 or 3 years ago. So this is something that affects everyone, right? So it's not something you just walk over and say it doesn't really matter. And sometimes, you know, slow is at a sign, both for, you know, in politics, but also in IT. You don't want people just a very, you know, a case, you know, an example I always bring up. You don't want people to be able to mess up your whole database in your ERP system, so you don't give them super user access to all the tables, right? But then you give them an RPA tool, and say you can do whatever you want with that. On the other hand, those two, you know, that's just stupid. That's just mixing it up. You're telling them you get an RPA tool which is difficult to manage and you'll mess everything up, because you're not allowed to flat file upload everything and just change the database, but you can do it through the front end. So you load the front end, you crash it, and you still update the crappy data. You know, you get my point?
Yes. Yes.
It really doesn't make any sense. So there's a lot of things clashing in those two areas. Figuring out how do we secure our data, how do we keep other people from accessing the data, and then they let the data just run wild and free and do whatever you want with it, so we can learn more about our company. And they don't really talk that much together. I think that those two things are actually the core issues at hand right now, the two global megatrends sort of clashing, and it's interesting to see how we're going to move that around. I am in my LinkedIn, if I talk about my LinkedIn feed again, is very focused on the legit data on mindfully and not so much IT security. I don't even know if IT security people are really on LinkedIn or if they're just hiding somewhere in the dark web, right? But it's but it is not something that's been talked a lot about. It's always about how can we enable people to do more, smarter, citizen developers, all those things, right? But you know, data integrity is king. And data integrity and IT security doesn't necessarily, you know, rhyme with automation and one bot for everyone and all those things, right?
Right. So I'm sure you'll be getting the next question that I'm going to shoot at you very frequently in your career is, how do you actually build a digital strategy? Where do we really start?
Well, I think the things about digital strategy is that it's really it doesn't really differ that much from ordinary strategy. It's all about the pain points. Figure out what are your challenges, what is wrong before you sort of prescribe a medication, right? It makes sense in every way. Everywhere we live, we don't start. I think I did it once, right? And I'm still hearing from it from my wife, where I put in an oven where the old oven worked perfectly well. So I spent, I don't know, way too much money on a new oven because I didn't want to clean the old one. And now my new oven is actually broken, while my old one, I gave it to my brother and it's working brilliantly for him. So it's like, you know, but anyway, so I didn't see what the real challenges were before I just, you know, made a remedy. So there was a problem, right? And really in my house, right? But basically saying that what is the key challenges to the company, and that is the most difficult thing of all things, knowing what's going on, knowing what data you have in a company, what comes in, what goes out. That takes time. So you don't just step down into it and say, let's fix it. You have to take your time to understand it, because if you understand things, you can change things, right? So there's all this understanding that has to go before it. And I think a lot of people are, you know, coming into companies trying to just adopt the newest technology they heard about, the new Gartner PowerPoint slide they've seen or something like that, and let's just add that. But really, you need to understand that there's first of all, there's an arrogance to doing that. That means you are basically saying that the company didn't work before, but you joined a company that works. So everything in a company usually works, the operations works, and they want you to make it better. So that doesn't mean they want you to replace it. They want you to make it better. So you have to understand what's going on first. Taking that time is something that is very, counterintuitive to the fast-paced IT environment that we're currently living in. Also to the fast-paced IT, resource market right now, where everyone is, can get new offers all the time. There's this what do you call incredible FOMO in the market. Everyone's like, oh, I can get something better here. I can do something smarter here. I can get more salary. Move on, do more. And so telling people to, okay, slow down, understand what's going on, and build something from there, right? So I've had this tendency myself, to go places where there was nothing, or just, let's just clean slate it, make greenfield architecture, say, well, let's just remove everything and start from the beginning. But really, what do you do if it's a brownfield, where you have things in already? I think there was an IBM, one of the IBM founders, can't remember his name, that said that God may have built the world in 7 days, but he didn't have an installed base. And I still think that's one of the most brilliant quotes to put to this, because that means that you have to understand what's going on before you can change anything. And that takes time. It's slow, it's incremental, it's not revolution, it's not digital transformation revolution as it's sometimes understood like, right? It's about, and you can't just go either with the blue sky objective saying everything's going to be nice if we get AI, oh, Moses gave this to me on Mount Sinai, right? Doesn't work that way. You have to sort of merge the descriptive state of affairs with the normative state of affairs. So what would you like to do? You can go with that. Go with some prejudice, or what do you call some ideas, not prejudice, but some ideas about what you want it to be, what you think this should be, some prejudgments. That's prejudice, right? Prejudgments about what you think would be ideal for this company. You always have these ideas. You can't take them out of your head, right? And then use that as sort of a looking glass for seeing how do we look at the company all the time. What I usually do is, I try to look at the data flows. Where is data generated? Who uses the data, and where does it go in the end? That also takes time, but if you're smart, you can get some good ideas about what's actually going on in the data areas. People always talk in processes. That's what business do. Business talks in processes. But as an IT professional, if you come talk about processes with them, you have to talk in IT terms and data terms, saying what is data in this process and figuring out where it goes. So mix the descriptive affairs with the normative, and get some of these market ideas that you get from outside in and mix with the descriptive affairs of state right now. And then you can start to build a plan for what you want to do, right? You can always start by, I think, okay. Then when you know what the challenges are, you can build remedies and policies to fix them, right? But I think some of the key things is to build things in a resilient way from the beginning, So making sure that you have everything you do today on a digital setup, or everything you want to do, everything if the company is already running an ERP system, figure out what kind of backup plans do they have? Do they have support and ops plans? Do they have documentation on what's going on? And then get that worked out. That's something you can always start with, and build a baseline for doing these things, so that in the long run, you will have something that's resilient as well. I think resilience is so overlooked in this, that just take again the automation space. Everyone's been talking about automation for years, but very few has actually said the word an automation operations plan. They never really think about it. It's just like, let's build it, let's get it to work, and then it'll probably work forever. This is not R2D2. It doesn't work forever. There's someone who has to support it, maintain it, make it run again, and when it breaks down, and so on and so on. So making a plan for that, get an agreement from the top management that you're going to build the resilience into everything you do, and then start doing all the fun stuff, right? So people say, let's just start small and see where it gets us. Well, usually it gets you another headache. Let's start with ground, saying that whatever we do, we have someone who can maintain it, and then build it from there, right?
Correct. Keeping this context in mind, could you help us with 5 rules of digital strategy, the do's and the don'ts?
Well, as I just said, don't believe you can start small and get it to become something big. You could do that, but then you'll end up having to make a stop point in that process. So you'll have to, you can start a little bit small, and then you take it way back and start thinking about the operations plan and the documentation and the setup and everything, and then you move on from there. Always build for scalability. So I said resilience just before, basically, and now I say scalability. Always build for scalability, not for scale. Know what the data is, basically understand the data. Don't believe in marketing.
Okay.
That's a bad one, right? But really, there's so much semantics going on. As I said in the beginning of the interview, that IT is automation, automation is IT, and you have to understand that. So when you think about your IT department as something boring down there, down the corridor, just remember that that's where everything you do with an IT tool will end up. Your cool fancy AI bot will end up with an IT supporter in 10 years. Have to remember that. And then I think that if I should come up with a fifth one, right, it would actually be, it's very much about mindset and how you think about things. It's difficult to say. It's difficult to come with something extremely concrete saying this will change the world, right? Because I used to make this Tolstoy quote where, have you read Anna Karenina? You know the book, but it starts off with, every happy family is the same. Every unhappy family is unhappy in its own way. It's the same with companies, right? Every happy, well-working digital company is the same, but everyone that's not fully digital is undigital in its own way. So that means that they're unique in the flaws in the company are unique all the time. That's also why they're on the market. They have a marketplace because they're unique, right? Makes sense, right? So, but the fifth thing would be that whatever you do, whatever you implement, don't believe this is something that will be there in 10 years, because it won't be. I have very few solutions I've built. I built some setups that last longer, but very few things have lasted more than a couple of years, basically, and processes that have been automated. Sorry, they don't last for more than a couple of years, and then they're out again. Things don't last in 10 years. In IT, you'll have something completely different. So don't believe you found, the golden idea, the thing to change the world. You haven't. And that's why I say build for scalability, flexibility, resilience, all these things. Just remember the things we learned from the old days, the elders, and then think about what can we do with the smart tools today while still listening to them. So we sort of build some things that sort of, stretches across time. I don't know, I haven't said that, but I'm a historian by trade. I'm an educated historian. So my focus is never ever on what's right now. What can I see now? What are people thinking is cool now? But basically saying that, why is this cool now if we said the same thing 2 years ago, or if we said something completely different 10 years ago? And how will this actually look in 10 years? Does it make sense, right? So what makes sense? What's reasonable? What can we actually believe has some kind of longevity? Can I be proud of this in 10 years? I try to think that. It's difficult in IT.
Yes, thank you so much, Lasse, for throwing light on such important topics. Are there any other sound bites you'd like to leave our audience before we wrap up?
Let me see, I have some notes here. No, I think that I've said most of it in different phrases, right? So, yeah, was this okay?
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much for sharing your valuable insights with us, Lasse. It was an honor talking to you and a pleasure to have you with us join our community. For more such content, subscribe to Engati so that you get exclusive content from leaders like Lasse from around the globe. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you with a new expert soon. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.